So, hello everyone. Welcome to my presentation about managing risk-taking and planning your careers. How many of you are testers? Like really testers, not managers, not developers? Okay. How many of you are testers for more than 3 years? Good. And how many of you have like a plan for the next 5 years of your career? Good. That's really good. And how many of those plans are your personal plans, not the plans that your company has for you? Okay, a bit less. So, something about the agenda of the presentation. So, there will be like 4 slots inside of it. So there will be an introduction. So I will tell you a little bit about why I'm presenting this topic and why I feel that this is something that is important for testers. There will be the core message. So there will be the steps that I encourage you to do in your planning of your daily work and future work. Then we'll try to do a summary, maybe an idea about what should be the next steps, and then there will be a short slot for questions and answers. So, why we are here? Why this topic? Why on this conference? So, I know a little bit about you, so I will start with speaking something about myself. So, I work in Poland, in Spyrosoft. I'm a test manager. So, for the most of my career, I was working in agile deliveries, as a Scrum Master, Product Owner, Agile Coach, and a tester. And now I'm working in automotive, and I've got like really core waterfall model, like a V model of software delivery. Everything that you see on ISTQB trainings, that this is the waterfall model of delivery, this is something that I currently work with. And I have to say that I love it. Like, I cannot imagine doing the systems that I'm working on in agile way or with Kanban, Lean, Scrum, or anything like this. I feel like there's kind of projects where there have to be an engineering behind it. There have to be a test manager role. There have to be a lot of test strategies, test plans, test designs, and at this later steps, the test execution and test documentation. I'm also working as a consultant for different companies to help them set up, for example, testing division or testing team. And I'm spending a lot of time in Poland as a part of technical recruitment team. So I'm usually responsible for speaking with testers about their technical knowledge, about where do you see yourself in the next 3 years, why you want to join our company, what do you want to learn in the next 1 year, what's your preferred way of learning, for example, and stuff like this. So in Poland, there are lots of companies where people ask you those questions, and they expect you to know if it's better for you to read a book or watch a film on YouTube or go to a conference. And usually you should have some justification behind it. So you need to describe, I prefer going to conferences because this is the benefit I get from them. And the reason why this topic happens is I've seen a lot of companies in Poland and all over Europe that they prepare personal development plans for people. They build career paths, and then suddenly there's one big career path for the whole testing division, and we've got 100 testers, and all of them will follow the same personal development plan. And where is being personal plan in this when there's like one plan for every tester? Like, he will be a tester for the next 5 years, he will grab those 3 certificates, and then he will move to be a test manager. This is not adapted to people. And I feel that testers should be more focused on growing the talents, growing the specialization, so finding what I'm the best at and how I can learn it faster, and then building your personal plan for yourself, and maybe go to your manager and just tell them, this is the plan that I have for myself and I want you to help me achieve it, instead of going to them and say, I need a plan how you want to make me a senior in the next 3 years. The presentation itself is also connected with MIT research. So there was a research made by MIT about how it was more focused on managers, so how managers can manage risk-taking to grow as a person, as a specialist. And I tried to just map it on some skills that also tester can benefit on. So, what's the easiest way to grow and to enhance your talents? So the first thing is to find your limitations. So there is a lot of space to learn. There is a lot of places you can grow on. You can be a security tester, you can be performance tester, you can be specialist in test automation or in exploratory sessions or anything you want to do, but you need to know your limits. You need to recognize where are you currently at and which path is the best for you. So you shouldn't grow your skills in all the directions possible and then see if there is an open position in my company or on the market. And suddenly, the next year, I'm performance tester. And 2 years after, I'm security tester somewhere else. You need to understand that you have some limitations, and then you need to plan your learning within the limits that you got. And the easiest way to grow is to manage the risks by taking them incrementally. So you don't grab like a biggest book you can find on performance testing, and then you learn it from scratch to be like a full expert of theory of performance testing. So the easiest way to do it is just start with something small, start with experiments, maybe choose a tool. You don't always have to start with a perfect tool. Sometimes if you are growing in a new specialty, for example, as performance, you should choose the tool which is the easiest to learn. So to learn how you run performance tests, how you design them, then execute them, and then gather the results. Then decide if the performance testing is something for you, and then if you decide yes, then you choose how you want to learn further. Maybe you need more theoretical knowledge, maybe you need a better tool, maybe you discover that this tool is not good enough for you, or maybe you need to be more expert in this tool that you already chosen. So you need to manage this. You need to gather the results, to build prototypes, run the experiments, and then evaluate them. And based on that results, you decide what is the next step. The one thing that is very tricky is the, how to name it, a bias that you have a theory. So you feel that all the automation is being done the wrong way. And then you have the perfect solution how you can do it better. And then you search for materials about your approach, and you always choose something that proves you are right. So for me, the easiest way to do it, to see the other perspective, is to find a person who is totally opposite to me. Like Petra gave you a presentation about the colors. So when you know what are your colors, you search for a person who is totally opposite on the colors. You don't match with them. And then you give them your ideas, but you need to have a trust for them to have a conversation on a subject, not on a personal level. Like if somebody gives you only arguments that are opposite to yours, and he says, this is a bad idea, this is the bad way of doing that, you cannot treat it personally that he's attacking you. He's just giving you another perspective. I've got a friend of mine, he spends like the whole his testing life as a person that is a specialist in being automation tester. Now he's moving to DevOps approach. And I'm a person who has not done testing in like last 5 or 6 years. So I was not designing any test cases, executing them, or automating them in many years. I moved to be more like a test manager and coaching the team of testers. So for me, our discussions are very beneficial because I've got an approach. We are using wrong tool to automation. We should use this other one because blah, 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 blah. And then suddenly he jumps in and says, no, because this tool is good for this, this, and this, and we should stay with it. So the easiest way to fix the problem with confirmation bias is just to find that person. But you need to feel comfortable with that person, that you never feel that he or she is attacking you personally. We are only discussing the idea. I always have like a confirmation bias, so I always have like a pros, and he's the person who always has cons. Then we match each other thinking on like a flip chart. He puts in like his arguments on one side, I'm putting mine on the other side. If something is opposite, we just cut it off, and then there stays a smaller amount, and we decide this is a good idea or a bad idea. The fourth thing that I think is very important is to have long-term goals. Like, if your goal is to be a test manager in the next 10 years, you need to always have this goal as some longer horizon, just in the back of your head. So every small takes you make, every risk you take, every summary of an experiment or a summary of your learning you do should be, at the end, analyzed. And then when you decide if you want to continue with this experiment or if you want to stop it and move to another one, you need to have this long horizon at the back of your head. Is it the correct direction? It's not always only, sometimes even if you run an experiment and you feel this is bad, I don't want to do it, maybe in a long-term perspective, it still requires more investment. If you want to be a test manager, for example, you cannot just grab few short experiments on different subjects like performance, automation, security, and others, and then when you grow to be a test manager, you will speak with your team and they will treat you as an expert in all of those subjects. So you cannot like run only 2 or 3 weeks experiment and then try to show them that you are aware what's happening in performance testing. You either need to be honest and say to them, I'm not an expert in performance testing, or you need to invest more in getting more knowledge. And then the easiest part is because you invest more, even if you know that this is not like a future for you, and you won't be a senior performance tester in the next 5 years because your direction is totally different, you can still grab the experience, even if this is something that is better for somebody else, because sometimes you will be the test manager. You will get 5, 10 testers in your team, and you will try to build personal development plans for them, because not many of them are having their own plans already written down and ready for you to present, and you then just show them the way. Many of them will go to you and say, yeah, I'm a tester. I have no idea what I will be doing in the next 3 years. Can you please help me? And then if you want to push them in the direction of the performance or security, you need to be aware what is required and if that person fits the idea or the direction you want to give her. And I feel very important part is don't gamble. So every time you make a decision, even if it's a very tough decision, you need to be prepared on how you want to handle that and why you are moving to that direction. So for me, the biggest place when I can use it is when I change companies. How many of you has changed the company you work in the last 3 years? At least once. Okay. So in the last 15 years that I'm a tester, I was working in, I would say, almost 20 different companies. And the one thing that I learned from all of this is that moving to a new company is not always a gamble and just a trick that I don't know what I will see in that company. So one of the things that I expect from a testers on interview they got with me, and to be honest, like 95% of them doesn't do this, is I usually expect that the tester who is a candidate for a job in my company will ask me what are my expectations from him. So where I want to put that person in my project, what they will be responsible for, how I will measure that they are doing the right job. And if they ask this in the interview process, not when they already joined the company, that's the moment when they don't gamble when they change job. Because they know which projects they will probably join, what they will have to be expert in, what will be expected from them to deliver, and how it will be measured. And sometimes it's really, really easy. Like when I'm trying to get a job in a new company, and I ask those questions, and then there's a technical recruiter who says, no, you are not joining my projects, but the other one. So I ask them, can we book a meeting with a project manager or test manager for that other project? And if they say no, then I'm not joining that company. Because I won't gamble. I want to meet the people I will work with in advance, at least my direct manager and project manager, and I need to know what is expected from me. And I feel that this is something that in Poland, nobody uses. They just ask, how much will I earn? What specialty will I get? Maybe they ask if I will be already a senior on the offer. And if yes, then I go. If all those three matches and they're good enough, then they will change the job. And then suddenly they jump to a project and they say, oh, that's a terrible project. Every previous company that I worked with was better than the current one. And it repeats and repeats and repeats. But they always change their job by like a chance, by a luck. And they don't prepare themselves for the things that they were supposed to do. And last part, and I feel that that's one of the most important one, is to kill the projects that are not important. So when you start with the first lesson, so when you start with the first step, and you will know your limits, usually then you will also know that there's a lot of space you can learn, and then you will plan your experiments, and then you start 10 different experiments in the same time. So I will try automation a little bit, performance, security. Maybe I will try 3 different tools in automation at once, 2 different tools in performance, and suddenly there's no time to do anything. Like I've got this problem in the last 4 or 5 years. So my decision one day was that I will try to write a blog. And I never started. And even if I went to a moment when I bought a subscription, like I bought a platform that I pay for just to have the motivation to start writing that blog, I'm still paying it and I'm still not doing it. And one of the reasons is you need to always be ready to kill our important projects. There will be always happening a lot of things. There will be always a lot of people asking you to help them, to join a new projects, maybe doing some pre-sales, some estimations, maybe joining some discussions about different stuff. And then you need to easily evaluate if it's important for you or not. And either you will always have a lot of overtime hours, or not have the time to do the job you are supposed to do, or you will have to start killing the projects that are not important. That's like one of the first lessons in time management or meeting management is that if there's no agenda, you should reject it. That's one of the easiest, that was one of the easiest things to do. So I feel like meeting without an agenda is not important. Because if somebody invites you in, and they don't put in enough effort to encourage you to go there, then why to bother? Why should I join a meeting when there's like 3 hours meeting and I have no idea what they will be talking about? Why they invite me and not somebody else? There's like 10 of testers in our team. Why I am on all of those meetings and testers are not? And there's no description, there's no preparation. And the important thing that is connected with experiments, you need to evaluate those projects on a short loop. So even if you plan an experiment for the next 5 months to learn a new technology or a new tool, you should repeat evaluation every 3-4 weeks. and decide if this project is still important, that I need to finish it, or I can drop it off. And you need also to decide if you want to invest more. Even if you drop it, you need to decide if you want to invest further, for example, by doing some lessons learned or summary of this experiment, or if it's so not important anymore that you stop it and just forget about it. Sometimes it's so easy. Like when I remember that a few years ago, there was many people learning Flash as a technology to make some animation on web pages. There was one day a decision that Flash will be not supported anymore. There is no need for you to do lessons learned when you drop learning Flash if you never go back to it. But if you do lessons learned, then write them somewhere. Just if you restart the project in a year or 2 years later, you can grab those notes and just double check what was the level you stopped in, and then continue, not to restart everything from scratch every time. And one bonus rule that I would like to encourage you to do: every one of you should build your own personal development plan. So based on those experiments, based on those lessons, on the projects you run, you should prepare a plan how or what you want to do in the future. And then when you have a one-to-one meeting with your manager, you should give them the plan and tell them, this is how I see myself in the future. Don't take your company career path for testers and apply it on me. Take my personal plan and try to help me achieve it. We can meet every month, we can meet every 3 months, and we can speak about, is that plan still valid? Did I change anything? Or do you see that my plan is not possible to be achieved and we need to change it? But the personal or career paths that the company is building for testers, usually there's like the highest level of test manager who has like hundreds of testers below him, and he writes down like a huge Excel file. These are the paths of the positions that testers move with, from which positions you can move to what are expected certificates, what is expected knowledge and stuff like this. And then they think that they can apply all hundreds of testers to this one huge Excel presentation. And that's not. Every person has their own plans, has their own goals, their own ideas about what they want to do. And the easiest way to achieve them is just to speak with your managers openly. This is the plan I have for myself for the next months or years. I don't know, I want to be a speaker at the conferences maybe. Maybe I want to achieve as much ISTQB certificates as possible. Maybe I feel that I like performance testing. Maybe I want to be exploratory testing and I hate test automation. And sometimes maybe your manager will tell you that you need to switch a job. Maybe when you tell them that you love exploratory testing because there was a lot of presentations about it at the conference, but your company has only test automation projects, maybe he will suggest to you that you should switch a job because the company strategy is to not have exploratory or manual testing projects in the near future. But still, if you have the level of trust and the level of open discussion, he will tell you that at once, and you already will have the knowledge that you need to plan changing a job in the next year, instead of having monthly meetings with your test manager and saying to him, I love exploratory testing, why we don't have it in our projects? I need to convince them to have it in my project. Then the project manager says, yeah, I will try to speak with the customer and the management about exploratory testing, and then it goes back to you and said, no, it's not possible to be done. Because the strategy is this way or another, and maybe it's not expected to be delivered in your project. So, to summarize the 6 steps. So first, you need to understand where you are currently in. So you do some sort of retrospective. What is my experience, what I like, what I don't like, and what I want to learn, what are the limits, and then you decide about the areas of improvement. You decide what are the specialties I want to learn, And then you take those risks incrementally. You start with experiments, you start with new, maybe technologies, maybe tools, maybe test approaches. Maybe you will start learning being a test manager or project manager or somebody else. Then when you're learning, when you're trying those experiments, you need to fight the confirmation biases. So you need to either find a person who can give your counter-arguments for something that you learn, or you need to be open in reading or learning to believe in both sides, or to be able to see the both ends of the area that you are focused on. Then, in the fourth step, you decide what is the long-term goal. If the experiments continue, when we or you can feel that this is the end point of this experiment. So you create short-term loops of evaluation and experimenting, but you also have on the back of your head, what is the final goal? If the final goal is to be an expert in performance testing with knowledge at least of 3 tools, how to run performance, one of them in Java, one of them in Python, and the third one in any technology that exists. And the fifth step is don't gamble. So that's the moment when it's important to have these honest discussions with your managers, with maybe different companies, maybe during networking sessions on a conference like this one, and be open about what is my plan for my future. Maybe you will just meet somebody who has an open position exactly matching the things that you want to learn. And maybe their expectation is to hire somebody on that position to just learn about it, not to be an expert in it, but just learn about it. One of the things that happened to me was 2 years ago, I joined a company, and I was like the first test consultant they had. And the funny thing was that the manager that started to be my line manager in that company, we were only meeting each other on a conference once a year for the last 5 years. And we were discussing his situation, and every time I was speaking with him, and I told him, you need a test consultant. He will solve those issues. And 2 years ago, we met again on that conference, and he was not speaking with me about the problems he has, but he told me, you know, we've got an option to have the first test consultant. Do you want to be that person? But the problem is, we don't have a defined scope of work or KPIs or anything. You will need to, when you join our company, you will design who is a test consultant, what he's supposed to do, and then we will apply those rules to you and check if you're a good test consultant. And I joined it. For me, it was like a huge idea of doing a project with totally new position and just designing it. And based on the expectations he presented, I was not feeling this is a gamble. Like, they created their own idea who is a test consultant, then I jump in and they will try to fit me in the way how they describe it or they had an idea how to do it. And killing unimportant projects is always important, because one of the things that will happen is that you will probably have more work than you have the time to do it. There is always 8 hours in the office, there is always 24 hours per day, and there will no additional hours. No way. So the more thing you feel like you can learn, you can experiment with, you need to have a priority board. And then you need to decide which is the higher priority, which is lower. Remove the ones that are not important, and focus on the things that you see your future in. Here are some sort of my contact data. Probably you will get the slides, so you will get all that's connected with also contact data and everything. Maybe we can move to questions and answers. Yeah? Я не понимаю по-русски, but...
А я слишком плохо говорю по-русски. Представим, что есть человек, который эксперт в
So let's imagine that there is an expert in testing, and at his previous job he managed to accomplish some kind of expert level, came to your company, didn't have a plan, and he doesn't want to make his own plan. He wants to follow somebody else's plan and to work in your company, and that's it. He doesn't want to develop his personality. He just wants to stay at the level that he has achieved by now. And will you hire such a person? He's an expert, but he doesn't want to grow anymore.
So the question was about there is a person, expert in some sphere in another company, and then he decided to move company, come to you, but he don't want to develop himself and just stay at that level which he reached previous company and not develop more and more. Will you take this person? He's an expert.
And he's an expert.
But he doesn't want to. We don't know in which sphere.
Okay, so okay, so during yeah, I understand. Should I repeat the question to everybody, or can I just give you an answer? Maybe I will give an answer. So the idea is there is an expert in a specific technology, then he wants to join your company, but he don't want to learn anything.
He wants to learn anything in his sphere.
Only in his
Only
sphere.
his sphere.
Okay. So the approach that I do during recruitment is I ask or speak with them about my expectations. So I tell them if I want them to learn new things, then I tell them that this is expected during the interview. And they can decide if they want to join my company or not. Or the other thing is sometimes we don't have such expectation. Sometimes we need an expert in that specific domain. And then I tell them that this is something that I look for. So I need an expert in, for example, this technology or this area that you have, and you will help me to achieve it. So then I always treat it like the reason that I decide if I want to hire somebody or not is based on their knowledge and experience and how he fits for the things that I expect from him. But I also give them the second point of view, what I will expect from them in the future, how I expect them to grow or something. And this is the moment when they decide if they want to join my team. And usually in those situations, if that person was not interested, it was them refusing the offer. So I never rejected somebody because he was not fitting in my expectations. I try to believe that I gave them enough knowledge, enough information, and enough freedom that if they are aware that they don't fit in, they will reject my offer instead of me rejecting them because they don't want to learn. But if that person decides to join our team or a company, then usually I do something similar to this one. So I ask him to look at those 6 steps and decide in which area they want to try to use those steps. And then if it's the area of their expertise, not something outside of it, it's still fine with me, at least as they try to grow as a person. Or they accept the moment when they go back to me and ask me for a rise, that they want to earn more money, and I will tell them you are not growing, so you are not getting more money. Or not getting a promotion, because there is no change between who you were 6 months ago and who you are currently. So if there is no change, no growth, then there is no growth in salary, for example. Okay?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just want clarification and similar question to the previous one. How effective is the person who doesn't have a concrete plan and has a rather creative mind? So he probably studies what he needs right now, but he doesn't have a plan, a specific plan. So is this person an effective one or not effective one? And if not effective, then does he lose to the person who, for example, is in your expectations?
And try his way in trying something new from time to time. Looking for something what is required right now, but still do not have a plan.
Okay, so if somebody don't have a plan, experiment a lot of spaces, and then still it's not like everything is that he found something that interests him. So
Is he a perspective person in the future?
Might be. So the one of the things that I try to do in these situations is I'm growing him like a mind map in which areas you can learn, like giving him or her 20 ideas. And then that person decides like on 10 of those that maybe will be interesting. And I try to be working in a closer loop with that person. So when that person experiments on those things, we both do evaluation. If it's good for that person, if it still interests them, if they're effective in the things that they are learning, and we remove those ideas. And if we remove all of them, then the open question for that person stays, either you want to try something else that you don't felt is interesting for you, but maybe when you experiment with it, it will be, or maybe you should change the direction you want to grow in totally to a different part. Like for example, I got a tester who was really bad at testing. Bad at testing, period. Manual testing, test automation, test designs, all was bad. Every time we try to learn him new stuff, it always fails. So the idea that happened was that we changed the whole career path for that person. So we asked them to be, he was like a bug resolution coordinator, and he was speaking with customers and was monitoring to bugs to be fixed and stuff like this. And you know what was the funny thing? So currently in Poland, he's a country manager for one of the really, really big software houses, and he found that his best way to achieve his goals was not being a tester, but being a manager. And he's really great at what he's doing. And it started in a moment when all of the testing activities were really, really bad. And we just switched the direction totally. Sometimes there are people who move from, for example, to project management. And they are really bad at testing sometimes. But then suddenly when there is like deadlines, huge Excel sheets to work with, a lot of meetings with customers, they just love it. And they're great at it. So I would start with a few experiments in a testing area, and if all of them are bad, then I would suggest to that person that they should switch the whole career idea of that they got for themselves. And then try the experiments in totally new areas, like project management, defect management, or being a software salesperson, or working with estimates of a project, not running execution of tests, but estimating. So I'm not doing test designs, I'm not doing test execution, but I do a lot of pre-sales, for example, in test estimations. And I need somehow to fit the estimations to sell the projects. Okay. Thank you. And there was more?
Yes, hello, thank you for your
Hello.
presentation. Just a small comment on that note, it was a bit of the reverse Peter principle, if you know it. Peter principle says people are promoted to the level of their incompetence.
Yeah, yeah.
And what you described is just the reverse.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
curious.
Yeah.
So my question actually, so you said during your presentation that we should acknowledge biases that affect our judgment. So I agree with you. I would just like to know, what do you think are the most common biases and how do you fight them? How do you try to overcome them?
So for me personally, the biggest bias that I face is when I've got any idea, I'll always search only for the data that proves that I'm right. I never search for any counter-arguments or anything like this. And I'm always 100% sure this is the perfect solution. And for me, the solution is to have a group of people that I can speak with. So I prepare a bit of presentation for them about my idea, and then I leave them for a few days or weeks and ask them to meet again, and they give me arguments why my idea is wrong. And that's pure agreement. I don't ask them to give me any positive feedback about my idea. I just ask them to give me the negative one. And then that's how I told you, we do a table, and I write my ideas, like positive ones, that person writes the negative ones. If two of them match as an opposite ones, we cut them off. And then there's a list that is not responded anyhow, and my list that is not responded by him. And we don't write new pros or cons that now it's opposite to this one. We just write the ideas that we prepared in advance. And when there's like a smaller group left, we just check which is better. And then that's how we choose the direction. And those people, I met them in different companies in which I worked, but now we work in totally different organizations. So one of the things that happens and is really good for us, all of those arguments are usually not oriented in an organization context. Because if I put an argument because in my company this is good, blah, 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 then he says, I don't care, I don't work in your organization. And he doesn't use these examples also. Like, this is bad idea because in my company it would not work. We only try to do it on a generic level. And then we just measure which set is bigger, better. I run like 3 or 4 sessions with different people about it and then try to grab those all together, and then this is my final evaluation. And usually when I go to my manager with that idea, I give them all the arguments that I left. So I don't only give them the positive ones, but I give them all the positive ones that were not cut off and all the negative ones that were not cut off. And I say to them, because of my expertise, I feel that this positive one is more important and I would suggest to go this way. But sometimes my manager says, no, from my perspective, those negative ones are more important than yours, and I would suggest to stop. But it's easier for them because I give them half of the solution, not like a problem without the solution, and I gave them already the list of pros and cons. So then they can just decide based on, sometimes they don't give any additional arguments. They just read it through and said, stop it, don't do it. Or they said, okay, let's go. And the other thing that happens is I always work with my managers and speak with them about the level of trust they have for me. So sometimes they don't even want to have this meeting about it. They just tell me, do whatever you want to do until I go to your desk and say stop. And then I'm having fun. But then I always ask them, do you still have this level of trust for me? Like every 1 or 2 months. Because sometimes they said, no, not anymore. I never told you to stop, but I don't have this level of trust that I had because you made some mistakes. So you need to have this short feedback loop and know how big the trust and confidence level is. Any other questions? Okay, we don't have more time for questions. Thank you very much. What?
T-shirt goes
To the guy in the middle with the last question. Dzień dobry. I need to meet. Hey.